The U.S. military is pursuing a more forward-leaning nuclear weapons strategy emerging from the recently published Nuclear Posture Review. It calls for a number of adjustments, including the addition of an SLBM, submarine-launched ballistic missile that is low yield and can hold targets at risk from further distances. There's a variety of reasons for this. A low-yield weapon can, of course, attack an area in a more surgical way. Also, given the advancements technically in modern air defenses that are better networked, that have digital processors, connect to one another much more easily, and can detect even some stealth aircraft at much further ranges on a much wider swath of frequencies. Given that, in the event that a stealth bomber has trouble getting over a target in order to drop the ordnance, a submarine-launched low-yield weapon could hold a target at risk. Secretary Mattis recently made the case for this before the House Armed Services Committee, and he said that despite some concerns that it could further destabilize, that in fact the addition of this weapon would be what he called a deterrent. It would strengthen the deterrence posture. And specifically, he said that he wants to bring Russia back to the negotiating table when it comes to their known violation of the INF Treaty. He says the negotiators need to have something to negotiate with. The idea of increased nuclear weapons hinges on, of course, a key paradox. In one sense, these are weapons of enormous destructive power, yet they're implemented for deterrence in order to keep the peace. The idea is to fully endorse the three-pronged nuclear triad, which includes both SLBMs, larger Trident II-D5 submarine-launched nuclear weapons, as well as ground-based ICBMs. In fact, the Air Force and Pentagon are now moving forward quickly with a new plan to build 400 new ground-based strategic deterrents. Both Northrop and Boeing are moving along. Air Force officials tell Warrior Maven they planned initial prototype shoot-offs as soon as 2020. The idea is to build an ICBM with better circuitry, more resilient. Of course, many of the details of this are not available unless there is widespread consensus that there needs to be an aggressive modernization of the nuclear arsenal. The Minuteman IIIs have been here for decades, and there's a need to have more modern but also dispersed GBSDs, ground-based strategic deterrents. A low-yield option as well gives you the ability to potentially hold a target at risk without necessarily destroying a much wider area. That's one of the reasons the Air Force and Pentagon are also aggressively pursuing the LRSO, a nuclear-armed cruise missile. Into detail, developers do tell Warrior Maven that the B-21 will be able to, quote, hold any target at risk anytime in the world. The idea is to give the Commander-in-Chief options in the need that further deterrence or, in some rare case, an actual nuclear strike is needed. Nuclear Posture Review is grounded in the premise that the nuclear threat environment globally is far different and far more serious than it was years ago. The threat of North Korea, of course Chinese and Russian rapid modernization is specifically cited. In fact, Secretary Mattis has said the Russians and the Chinese have specifically added a variety of new nuclear-armed platforms, and the U.S. has only added one, he said, the F-35. That being said, the fast-moving stealth F-35, the multi-role fighter, is expected to be quite significant when it comes to the nuclear attack prospect. Chris Osborne, Warrior Maven.